Hello and welcome to the Alec Italiano show. I'm Alec and this is my podcast. We have a great show lined up for you guys tonight. For those of you tuning in for the first time, I'd like to explain that this podcast covers Pennsylvania local issues and candidates. Now granted, sometimes the national debate enters the conversation and much of the local news is focused more on the western part of the Commonwealth, but we're doing our best here. Now later on in the show, we are going to be talking about how Pennsylvania has some unique problems brought on by how the Commonwealth is organized. But I'd like to lead this show talking about the heated big dollar race for U.S. Senator in Pennsylvania between Republican Pat Toomey, the incumbent, and the challenging Democrat Katie McGinty. Toomey is a former House representative that served from 1999 to 2005, but he didn't seek re-election based on a 1998 campaign pledge concerning term limits. Thought that was interesting to note. Now McGinty, she's a true and blue Democrat, serving as the Secretary of Environmental Protection in Pennsylvania from 2003 to 2008, and was Governor Wolf's Chief of Staff for the first 6 months of his governorship in 2015, before eventually deciding to run for this U.S. Senate seat. It is a highly sought-after position, after many pundits point to this race, saying that it will give Democrats the eventual majority in the U.S. Senate. Yes, that also means having a say in the Supreme Court decision as well. Now this election has a lot of similarities to the national election, as McGinty has also come under attack for not releasing emails when she was Chief of Staff for Wolf. And according to Republicans, that she has only released 71 of the 15,000 requested emails. And then Toomey is in no man's land when it comes to endorsing Trump. Basically, he can't decide whether it'll kill him or hurt him in a very purple Pennsylvania this election year. And this is where I would like to introduce our panel, Mr. Greg Allen.
What's going on?
And Mr. Craig Ryan.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you both for being with us.
You're welcome for having me.
Boo.
Little grammar correction there. Little copy editing as we go. But I would like to start off this with how strikingly similar this race is compared to Trump v. Clinton. Greg, why do you think that is? And do you think that the two elections the election will have the same two people being elected, either Trump and Toomey or Hillary and Katie?
Which question do you want to answer first?
Let's go with the first question first.
Second question seems a little easier to start with, but your show, your rules.
Thank you.
The Democratic candidate is as unexciting as Hillary is, and I mean, this an email scandal. This is just unbelievable. I don't know anything about this one though, particularly what they're looking for.
And the interesting thing is too, because it is at a state level, you're not getting as much press over it.
No, I just don't. I wonder how many email problems. I mean, like how many current politicians have subpoenas out right now asking for their email records.
I don't know. It's a little ridiculous.
But on that note, they're extremely similar. Just like Crooked Hillary, you got Shady Katie.
Right.
You know, I got this kind of elementary name calling. On the Republican end, if personality-wise, Toomey doesn't seem to be similar at all to Trump. He kind of seems very mellow. Like if you consider Trump to be very charismatic.
Right.
Toomey just doesn't have that. And he's also hasn't really taken a stance. He has not campaigned when Trump has probably been here a solid 15, 20 times.
I think I saw 15 in the headlines.
The primaries
recently.
have ended,
yeah.
And they have not, just like Paul Ryan, they aren't they aren't going around together. Toomey hasn't openly endorsed or condemned Trump, which kind of puts him in awkward water when the opposition brings it up. Which I don't blame him. I think we have a lot of people, as Craig said earlier, a lot of Democrats switch to Republicans to vote for Trump. So a lot of independent voters are going Trump. So Toomey, even if he does disagree with them, that could be suicide here in Pennsylvania, where I actually think Trump is polling better than he is nationally.
Yeah, and I think that's fair to say. And you know, the big news this week was, Toomey isn't really endorsing anybody. He's not. Like you said, it's a very Paul Ryan response.
Is the Trump side of the Republican Party running anybody against Toomey? Because I know they've been talking about wanting to.
Against Toomey?
Yeah, which if he's endorsed Trump, they won't do that to him. But if he goes against Trump, they are gonna
maybe in later elections. But it's definitely too late for anything like that at this point.
I believe they are against Mahoney, right? I believe they're running.
Yeah, I don't know. Are they actually running a candidate, or are they?
He uses Trump's slogan. I just assumed that was a part of the whole.
Mahoney's running for something else.
If you're a politician that thinks you can capitalize off associating yourself with Trump, you might as well use the slogan.
My understanding was the entire Trump side of the Republican Party was going to run opposition to anybody who doesn't come out and support him for the Republican nomination.
I just don't. I think it's a little too late, too little at this point.
Maybe sure down the road. I wasn't sure if they were already running.
I've noticed there are a lot of Trump signs in the neighborhoods around us. I've noticed a lot of Toomey with him.
Yes,
I've seen a lot of Trump Toomey combos. Normally, if you have one, you have the other.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. A lot
Meanwhile, Hillary not only doesn't have signs, but I haven't seen a McGuinty sign.
Period. Oh, I haven't.
I don't know if I've seen one.
No, and I think they're banking on that women just straight Democratic pull lever
voting
vote.
Down the ballot.
You know what I mean? So, I thought this was interesting. Back on August 10th. Philip Winters wrote to the Post-Gazette and summed it up pretty eloquently. I'll read you his last paragraph in his letter. Mr. Toomey, you can no longer have it both ways. Stop trying to walk the tightrope of political non-speak. Yes, this may be the most important question you will have to answer during your re-election campaign. A percentage of the electorate is going to disagree with you no matter which choice you make. Stop being a coward and tell us what you think. Philip obviously referring to Trump there. And since this is a battleground state, I mean, it's worth mentioning. I mean, that was leading me into the second question is it possible for somebody like Trump to win, but then McGuinty to also win? I don't
think they're split. I really don't think they're split. I think the people showing up are going to vote straight one party up or down the ticket. Because each party, each president, well, I guess not so much Trump as Paul Ryan and the party has been making a big deal about at least go and vote for your local guys. Even if you don't like the presidential candidates, it's the down ballot that's important. So these seem pretty cookie cutter Republican Democrats. I don't really see a lot of people that would vote one and
not the other,
or the opposite.
Yeah,
I can't see one that's going to go, I support Trump, but I like McGuinty,
right,
or vice versa. I don't see that.
I think the only weird thing that you have playing out here is what it's going to do with the turnout. In an article by Loman Henry in the Trib on October 8th, he pointed out that turnout for the 2012 presidential election topped 58% in Pennsylvania. Now, in the following midterm election, in the statewide races, voter turnout was only 17%. So I think, as conventional logic would have you
get
go.
Involved, Pennsylvania. Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, and that's always the case. You have these midterm people not really, taking it. It's easier for a Republican, in my opinion. It's easier for a Republican to skate by on a midterm election because conventional logic. I mean, it's not conventional logic. It's fact. There are more registered Democrats than there are Republicans in most of the state. So when you don't get turnout, Republicans love to turn out. This is how you get majorities leaning to the right in both the House and the Senate. So
the commercials are pretty standard too.
Yeah, it's almost like they have people from both the Hillary campaign and the Trump campaign kind of doing interference for both of them.
One took money from big donors, the other colluded with them.
Mm-hmm.
One got a job on.
Yeah, it's pretty classic rhetoric.
McGuinty, right? She got a seat on the board of a company.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that commercial.
Got a company to send her husband money or something.
Shady Katie.
Shady Katie. With the tacky background music.
Yeah.
Do you see the one with the kid on the bike? He just stops randomly, like he's biking down the street. All of a sudden stops, talks to the camera.
No.
He goes, "That's Shady Katie."
Oh, jeez.
He's like the paper delivery boy. He's just delivering the paper down the street. Then he keeps going.
Wouldn't it be nice, though, if we could get some people to actually vote, not just down party lines, to actually look into all the candidates and decide?
It would be amazing if we talked public policy in an election year. That would be That would be pretty crazy.
For 5 minutes.
If people
to
actually
talk about what these candidates
if
are
people
actually
just didn't
standing
vote
for.
for the brightest shining object.
And we did
that
try
they
to
see in
get the
front of them.
debate. We tried to get the debate and play some clips, but
We can't even find it. We can't even find the debate. But
They say in the internet you can find anything, but we couldn't find this. so I
watching
thought
these
that
two
was
talk, though,
interesting.
I think would have been like an ear bleeder.
Oh,
I really
yeah.
think that would have been a really circular conversation.
But it's interesting with this McGinty email thing because in the recent Associated Press article that just came out today, October 15th, it goes on how basically Governor Wolf's office is not going to the decision came down from the PA Supreme Court today saying that Wolf's office has up to 30 days to release the rest of the emails. Now, obviously, we're under 30 days before the election, so essentially they're saying they don't have to be released beforehand. So it's just curious how it all ended up working out. I think I'm not pausing on this. Supreme Court of Pennsylvania leans a little to the left, so they're this is where you're seeing some of this good old boys political backroom dealing, and this has always sort of been a problem. And we'll get into this a little bit more in the second half of the show with Pennsylvania kind of being always pegged as a corrupt state here within the nation. So
That's why the Supreme Court decision in the general election is such a big deal because of politics. These people sitting in these positions should be down the middle. They shouldn't be choosing a side.
Yeah.
On the Supreme Court.
And it's interesting that you brought that up, Craig, because in that same Loman Henry article I was referencing earlier, he specifically points out how corrupt most of these people in these quote row offices are. You have former State Treasurer Barbara Haffer, who was recently indicted for alleged improprieties dating to her time in office, and then of course you have former Auditor General Al Benedict and former State Treasurer Bud Dwyer, also convicted of crimes. So there's been a lot of turnover. Well, not really turnover, but it just seems like anybody who is supposed to be enforcing the law in Pennsylvania is also found breaking the law.
And sometimes you wonder if they even know the law.
It's not so much that it's
what is the law anymore? I'm beginning to wonder.
Just depends on what my party chooses. That's how
we sort of talked about this in the last show where
the
more complicated you make it, the easier it is almost to find loopholes and workarounds. So
well, I have a question. How much do you think the general election is sucking up so much oxygen in the room right now?
Right.
What kind of effect do you think that does have on when people after you're done talking? Okay, Donald and Hillary. To talk about down ballot, it's like, oh, Jesus, tough. I don't even... Did anybody have any affairs? What's the affair situation?
Yeah, and this election in particular, the Pennsylvania U.S. Senate one, got a lot more attention in the primaries.
We've been making national news. This Toomey McGinty race has been at least... They don't talk about what the points of difference are, like on Fox or on CNN between them, but they point
it out.
This is an interesting race.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, you have a purple state here, Pennsylvania. It's going to be swing state in the national, and it might also decide who's going to have the majority in the Senate and likely the outcome of the Supreme Court. And I think that's the biggest thing to emphasize here is, and a lot of people have said this, that the Supreme Court decision is really the ramifications of what the national election is going to be. And right here in Pennsylvania, you have a very good example of how the Senate race could also affect that. And this, like I was saying earlier, this was big in the primaries. This is where you had John Fetterman, Braddock's mayor.
I'd rather him be running.
I think
John Fetterman would have then you'd have an interesting cross. You'd have the Democrat being a little bit more blusterous.
Yes.
The Republican, a more standard election.
Yes.
That would have been a much more normal.
And to further make ties to the national election, Fetterman was more the Bernie Sanders.
This guy's like crowd. 6'8". The guy just towers above people.
Progressive. Very
gigantic
progressive.
guy. He just pick you up by your head.
So, it's interesting. I just want to talk about one more thing before we move on here.
Are those the worst pictures that somebody could ever find of them?
No.
I mean, we're looking.
They don't have good pictures.
For those of you for those of you in the audience, we're looking at Pat Toomey's up his nose.
It's tough.
Katie McGinty's like.
It's
I don't even
know
how to
interesting
talk there.
Yeah,
it's tough to find interesting talking points on these two. It really we're stretching here to try and.
Well, here's McGinty's.
But I don't think it'll split. For the record, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it will either. But
also the Senate.
I think it is actually possible because, and this is to clarify from our last show, the mistake on my part, where I thought that the general election, Pennsylvania worked like the electoral did in the primary, I was wrong. In the primaries, you do have the precincts in the counties going towards it, but in the general, it's a popular vote. So, I thought that was interesting.
Yes,
but
winner take all. Unless you still can have an electoral guy go rogue.
I think you can. I'm not sure the specifics on that.
There's no legal punishment if you do. There
Right.
are 7 states where you get fined
Right.
$1,000 to $10,000
So
if you don't vote.
So I thought
the way you're supposed to, the way your party
goes, yeah, it works the same
against the popular vote.
You have so many delegates and all this stuff, and they can switch if they want. It's as confusing as you want it to be, as we'll get to later. But real quick before we move on, McGuinty's latest attack, I guess you would call it, against Toomey was apparently Toomey had he had some shares in a company, Team Capital. Almost about $1 million worth of shares, which used this controversial foreclosure method called a confession of judgment to foreclose on 21 Pennsylvania homes that were used as collateral for business loans. This really isn't that illegal, mostly because
Lock him up.
Mostly because in Pennsylvania it's legal to use this confession of judgment for commercial mortgages. I guess the ambiguity is, these were houses used as collateral for businesses. So, really she's trying to frame the argument that because Toomey's, he is on the finance committee and he's fighting to dismantle the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And that's basically what this bank did was, pulled these foreclosures on these houses that were financing small businesses. And it's just the weird thing about this unique rule, is that it's not like a typical foreclosure. It allows the bank to begin foreclosing after a single missed payment without giving the borrower notice or a chance to contest it. So it's not very good for the consumer because he had shares in the company. It gets a little gray, but it's tough to say if he actually made money off the deal or not.
So just like Hillary, when you're under fire, the Democrat has to go back and dig up a story.
Yeah.
And make something
and it's similar
to distract away from the
right, and to make more similarities. It's almost like
politics
Trump.
101.
It's almost like Trump with the
taxes.
Trump with the taxes. Trump didn't really do anything illegal. It's just a little shady. So shady Katie's trying to flip it. She's trying to flip it over.
They're just trying to divert the attention away from their.
Well, on that note, crazy and all partisan. How many more elections are we going to be talking about? Emails in general. Like, do you think at least after this, people are going to go, okay, well, maybe this is really
maybe we could get a candidate to run and say they want to change the laws on the email situation.
No email. We should go burn notice.
If it's classified information, it should be in. We have certified mail. We have.
They should be using Morse code to communicate with their staffers. If you want to keep it private, there are hidden languages. You can put papers on burn notice. If you're that concerned with coming across as looking like a politician,
I don't understand. Is there only one? This might make me sound completely stupid. Is there only one World Wide Web, or is there can you have a version of the internet that somebody cannot get?
Well,
but I'm saying, can there be a separate kind of internet?
I think the Silk Road
just for our government to use themselves.
There is, possible? And that is.
So why can't we just go down that route where they can just send emails, or we have no access?
Can it be fully protected?
At
the end of the day, can it ever be fully protected?
There's still no guarantees.
It could be accessed.
What if it's all landlines?
That's the crux of the.
What if they all run it by wire?
No, it is already ran by wire. The problem is there's still no guarantees. It's
why with the emails,
too easy to hack? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
With the emails being such a big deal, why don't we see more tech guys running for positions of power?
That's a good
like if this is really especially with all the hacking, with national security being an issue, why don't we see some more cybersecurity people running?
It's a good question, Greg. Maybe in the future that's what we'll see. So I want to cut you off there and listen to a little September version here, and we'll take a quick 10-second break, and we'll come back to you here shortly. All right, now that we've all had some chance to sip our beverages of choice, I'd like to welcome everybody back to the Alec Italiano show. I'm Alec, and we were just talking about the McGuinty-Toomey race. and kind of how crazy similar it is on the national election, and also how crazy important it is in the national scope of things. But I would like to move on to something concerning Pennsylvania's constitution and affects the entire Commonwealth. So an interesting aspect of Pennsylvania's governing body is that it is the second biggest in the entire nation. Pennsylvania has 253 members in her General Assembly. That's 203 in the House and 50 in the Senate. And Pennsylvania also has the largest full-time legislature, where the average member's salary is $85,356 as of 2014. Interestingly enough, it's tiny New Hampshire with 424 members, 400 in the House, 24 in the Senate, with the largest full body in the nation. Now, let me put that in some perspective for you. Texas, for instance, has 181 members in their general body for the 26,960,000 people who choose to live there. Now, some simple division makes that one representative for every 148,950 people in Texas. In Pennsylvania, it's one representative for every 50,000 people, and in New Hampshire, you have one person for every 3,129 people living in New Hampshire. Now, to be fair, there is a bill in the Pennsylvania House right now designed to eliminate some representative positions, but I thought that was just worth noting. And it doesn't stop there, for those of you who thought I was done ranting. But Pennsylvania not only has the largest political body, full-time political body, we also have a lot of municipalities as well. 2,562 municipalities to be exact. That's your town, your city, your township, your city, anything along those lines, a borough, for those who live in Pennsylvania. So to put that number in perspective, Illinois and Ohio have very similar populations to Pennsylvania, and Illinois has 1,299 municipalities. That's less than half, and Ohio has 938. So Pennsylvania is a little bit of an anomaly on this front too. So in 2003, because of this crazy gap we have here, there was a study published called Little Boxes, a study of fragmented local governance in Pennsylvania, scope, consequences, and reforms. And it was prepared by David Rusk. And basically what this study predicted came true about 15 years later. Mr. Rusk calls out how suburban sprawl will lead to resentment between the cities and the townships, and how these little boxes create segregation boundaries, and basically how difficult it is to merge a municipality. Let me just read you a few quotes from the study because I think they're funny, especially the first one. Sprawl is like pornography. It's hard to define, but you know it when you see it. I thought that was just, eloquently put.
I don't get that analogy. I know. I'm challenged that.
You're challenging the sprawl one?
Yeah. I don't understand how sprawl is like pornography at all. You know exactly what porn is when you see it.
That's the point he's making.
You haven't.
It's not hard to define pornography.
You haven't experimented with the internet enough, Greg.
I know. After all these emails, I'm avoiding it. I'm actively avoiding the internet. It terrifies me.
I think that's the point he's actually trying to make here, even in 2003. Is it's like whatever you want to call porn is what porn is.
Well, who does it? Oh, I guess that does bring up with Machado, the sex tape that was just a reality show clip of her having
that is true,
grainy sex on a beach in a Latino.
Let me move on to the next quote there before you digress a little bit more there,
Greg.
Don't
you remember that?
No,
but that was.
I don't want to know.
That was his 3 a.m. tweet.
Oh yeah,
check out the sex tape. Okay. It's not a sex tape.
Check out the sex tape.
But that's the problem. It wasn't a sex tape, so I didn't really,
It wasn't a true sex tape.
But how is porn hard to define?
I think people are giving it different definitions to call it different things, so they can show it in places you normally wouldn't see it, like I guess the internet, making it
Are the evangelicals being difficult about how we define porn?
I think you're looking a little too much into the quote. I just thought it was funny.
Okay.
So the study also points out University of Pittsburgh's David Y. Miller, who published a short but definitive book on the regional governing of metropolitan America in 2002. Miller found that, quote, jurisdiction diffusion is significantly and unquestionably linked to black segregation black segregation in metropolitan America. Now, I just thought that was interesting because don't forget, this study was released in 2003, well before the Black Lives Matter movement came to fruition. And I really do think, especially in Pennsylvania, one of the big reasons why you have all these little boxes of municipalities is basically like a very clever way to segregate. And we see examples of that where we live now. I mean, wouldn't you agree? There seems to be a lot more white people that live in Hempfield Township and a lot more black people that live in Greensburg and Jeanette. So the cities, not the surrounding peripheral areas, but the actual cities, and even those school districts. I think we graduated with like 5 black people at Hempfield.
I don't know if graduated. I think I think that was the whole school.
The whole school.
They actually, it was enough.
Seriously?
It was enough that they had like I mean, I'm very exaggerating here. I think there was a club of about 25.
Yeah.
African. I'd say about 5.
Out of all them students.
Out of all those students, yes. And I mean, I don't know what the numbers are in Jeanette and Greensburg, but needless to say,
I mean, there's obviously an overwhelming number of white people, but I mean, there's more white people.
We're talking
society,
well over 95% of Hempfields.
I didn't realize it was that much.
Well over
95.
It's not that bad in Greensburg.
What do you say Greensburg is, like 90 or like 80?
I would say more along the lines like 70.
Okay,
that's what I was
one
thinking.
out of 4.
I was thinking 70. Well, they also bring. I remember, at least when I was in high school, I went to Greensburg, Salem, and they would bring kids who were basically on their last chance from Philadelphia, and they came to a home that must have been located somewhere in our school district's area, and they would come to school there. So that would also up it. I don't know if that's
I think they did that in Erie too, actually.
Erie?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But why are there so many more African Americans in Greensburg?
Well, that's the point that I'm making here. It's the
I think
the jurisdiction.
What is the jurisdictional diffusion?
Well, what they're saying is we're drawing an imaginary border, essentially. And this is, you hear a lot of rhetoric like, oh, kids shouldn't be, the education shouldn't be based on their zip code. Like you hear that rhetoric a lot. That's kind of what's happening here in Pennsylvania. Like, because you could live in the same zip code. Like in Jeanette, you can live in 15644 and live in Lincoln Heights, where I grew up, and go to Hempfield, but also, live on Welker Street, where we are now, and you would go to Jeanette, same zip code, but your education varies a lot, depending on, where exactly you are there. So I think that's the point that you're trying to make here, and it is segregating at a very... It's not at a topical level where it's segregating.
You're not forcing the segregation. It's just happening naturally. Almost.
Yeah, it's happening naturally because of the environment in which we are in. And Jeanette, for example, has a depressed market. So you're going to sort of push poorer people to live in Jeanette, and the richer folk are going to move out into the suburbs in Hempfield. And then that also creates your disparities where you have white rich kids going to Hempfield and you got poor black kids going to Jeanette. I mean, that's pretty...
What's stopping somebody, for what you said, a poor black kid in Jeanette? What's stopping their family from getting out of Jeanette and going to Hempfield? No, I don't see what's stopping.
Nothing other than maybe it's going to be more expensive to live in Hempfield, than it is in Jeanette.
Pennsylvania, there's jobs everywhere. I'm
not talking about jobs. I'm talking about cost of living.
They can get a better job.
Easier said than done, Craig.
I don't.
You're being staunch here, and I understand.
I don't understand how it's hard for them to get a better job.
But it's not only that too.
There aren't a lot of job openings up in this.
But
area.
see, it's not.
Exactly there's a lot. I don't. I would say if you live in Pennsylvania and you don't have a job,
it's not about the job. It's not about the job, Craig, because
it's not really.
You're going to be probably making close to the same where you live now. To me, but see, here's what you're doing when you do that. Here's what you're doing when you do that is you're forcing people out of Jeanette, because why would anybody ever want to live in Jeanette? Okay, I'll go get a better job. Maybe it's not that much more expensive to live in Hempfield. This is why Jeanette's population has lost 7,000 people in the last 20 years. So because of these tiny boxes that we live in, it creates a lot of stress on our environment.
Didn't all of our families end up moving out of Jeanette, or at least a member of our family?
Yeah.
My mom was from Jeanette.
My grandparents were from Jeanette.
You have people father's family. Basically the whole Shrum family is in Jeanette except.
So we are all basically first generation Spartans.
My dad did go to Hempfield, but yeah.
Did your mom though?
She went to Latrobe.
Oh.
Little cross county pollination
Trump
there.
town. Latrobe has gone full on Trump everywhere. Everywhere.
Let me give a little bit more
I
context.
think it might be illegal to be a Hillary supporter in Latrobe.
The red light is a Trump Pence logo. When it gets to 130, it's just
Does
everywhere.
Does the T go up and down inside the P?
It does, and it does a little rapey thing.
The little rapey thing.
Did you see that? Did you see that? Whenever they came out with the logo,
It didn't even last 15 minutes. Like someone looked at that.
Yeah,
And
somebody
goes,
just
that.
it goes up and down right through the hole.
I don't want to explain to what their hands are doing right now, so
Basically,
We'll see if
one
we can
hand
get
is
this-
simulating a T, and the other, and the T is going into the P.
We'll
Yeah.
see if I can.
That's what
I'm sure it won't be hard. I'll go back and find this, and we'll try to get this up on the
Yeah.
website.
Yeah,
For anybody
I'm
curious
sure.
what we're talking about, we'll put it up for you.
But to get back to what we were originally talking about, I think the point that Miller is trying to say is too much diffusion of power in metropolitan areas serves to increase the probability of racial segregation and to deter the ability of the metropolitan region to take advantage of economic expansion occurring within the region. Those are Miller's words, not mine. But basically what he's saying is when you do have economic expansion occurring in the region, as we have now with Pittsburgh. I don't think anybody wants to argue that right now anyways. That's not being diffused in the entire area and region appropriately, and it just increases the probability of racial segregation and deters the ability for the region to take full advantage of it. So I think that's definitely worth noting that he said that back in 2002-03, and that's essentially exactly what happened. And if we don't do anything to correct it soon, we could be going down an interesting path. Now, in the first Alec Italiano show, we did talk a little bit about like Jeanette merging with the Hempfield or something along those lines. And something that this study points out is how laborious consolidation is of municipalities. I'll give you an example here. St. Mary's Borough and Benzinger Township tried to form into a new city of St. Mary's back in 1994. Now, this was the first municipal government consolidation in the Commonwealth since 1956. Before that, what it does is it requires the approval by the electorate of both municipalities going to the polls 3 times in 1 year just to get the form of government they wanted for their new city. So I just think that's weird. You got to have these people go to the polls 3 times in a single year and have them all go yes, 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 yes from each municipality to eventually have that municipality merge. I mean,
they have to do it 3 times.
3 times in a year.
Even here, if we went.
That's
We
what I'm
couldn't
saying.
just do it once.
No, you have to do it 3 times in a year. That's what
Why?
the rules.
Yeah,
That's
I
what the
don't-
Constitution states. And Pennsylvania
I
has
didn't
just
know
such an antiquated, constitution, and they haven't brought up
By
their
definition, the
consolidated
Constitution is
statuses yet.
kind of old.
So basically, if Hempfield if Jeanette wanted to merge with Hempfield, you would have to have the Hempfield voters 3 times in a year vote in a majority to say yes, we want this merge to happen, and Jeanette would also have to do the same thing.
I vote for that.
Do you think everybody in Hempfield would?
I think there's a lot to be gained.
Like, if
in
you would
Hempfield
actually
by
bring it to
merging
a
with
vote.
Jeanette. We could use the diversity.
But
Feel like that would help.
but taxes would go up in Hempfield, wouldn't they?
Okay, I'm not an anti-tax.
I know you're not,
I'm
but
not
I
an
think a lot of
anti-tax
people that
guy.
live in Hempfield
You
are.
will-
I
you will be
understand my
subsidized.
duty as a Pennsylvania citizen.
Yes.
I have no problem giving back
Now
to
the
the wonderful community
I will
that
down.
has allowed me the opportunity.
I am in Hempfield Township, and I will say no.
see, there you go.
I do not subsidize.
You're hearing
You're
it
not-
right.
you're
You're hearing
not
it right
subsidizing
here
anything.
on the Alec Italiano
There's
show.
no subsidizing
the crux
going
of this argument right here, right now. So, I think it is fair that the author, Mr. Rusk, does want to point out that he had a quote in the study that just because Allegheny County is divided up into 130 municipalities, yes, Allegheny County in itself has 130 municipalities. That's not the sole reason for Pittsburgh losing its steel industry, for example. His argument is more about how that fragmentation complicates the Pittsburgh region's capacity to retool itself as a regional economy after such a blow. And, we talked about transportation last time. I think this is also where you're seeing a big divide here. So
I say we annex Latrobe also.
I mean,
It's just created a leviathan of a town.
we talked about this before. Like school districts are county-wide in places like West Virginia and Florida.
Yeah, we have.
You know,
That'd
so
be interesting.
it is
That'd be
interesting. It is interesting because it eliminates that segregation that these little boxes that we're living in Pennsylvania, have. So, but Craig, I wanna leave it. I want to give you the last word here, and basically, I know that was maybe something you didn't know about before. How hard it is to merge municipalities and how big our governing body is. Do you find that as a conservative something troubling? Do you think that this is something Pennsylvania should try to make some attempts to work towards? I mean, obviously, if you have all these people in that 253 members in Pennsylvania's General Assembly, and the average member's salary is $85,000, you have a lot of money being spent on salaries that maybe should be spent somewhere else. Just was wondering your opinion on that.
I don't think those salary numbers are too off the charts. 80,000, right? Was it
85,000.
85,000? Yeah, that's not.
But you have 253 members. That's a thing. Like
it's a lot of.
Ohio only has,
What are their incomes in Ohio?
I didn't pull. Those numbers.
I'm looking at 85,000. That doesn't seem like too ridiculous of an income. There.
Yeah, but I'm saying like Texas, which is bigger than Pennsylvania, only has 181 members. So
do they make proportionately more pay though? If there's only 181, do they get paid for the more people they represent?
I'm assuming that they're.
I don't understand why
the average salary might be the same, but then apples to apples, you're still spending considerable less on salaries overall.
I mean,
covering more people too over a broader tax base.
The salaries should be approved by the people, the taxpayers, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know. That might be too complicated.
Pennsylvania came under fire for that.
But I don't. Why is there not a gold standard to keep it one representative to maybe every 50,000 instead of having the variance where just New Hampshire?
Whoa! What is this kind of liberal hogwash coming out of your mouth? That's the state's rights. The state has the right to determine what it wants its governing body to look like. If Texas just wants 10 people to make up its Senate, they got a right to have 10. If Pennsylvania wants to get 5,000, hey.
Well, I mean, at
the end of the day, it's the state's right. To
New Hampshire has one person for every 3,129 people. That's a far cry from Texas, who has one person for every 148,000 people.
I like the one person for every 3,000 people. Though I'd rather see that. I'd rather have a more.
It's an interesting.
Pretty big. How many would that leave us with if we had one for every 3,000? What's our population?
16 million.
Let's see.
Oh, can you do that math off the top of your head, Greg?
3,000 times 10, 300.
I mean, yeah, I am for letting the states do what they want. For the most part, I think the federal government should basically.
We would be upwards. I think we'd be pretty close to 5,000. 5,000 representatives if we did.
And if we paid them all $86,000, that could be a problem.
I'm pretty sure we would.
Well, there's your answer to that problem.
And to be fair,
4,800 representatives. That'd be one hell of a vote.
New Hampshire's tiny enough that they can afford to do something like that, and they're not a full-time staff either. So, I think a lot of their representatives are, it's more like a part-time civil service type.
There's your answer there. Then it's too expensive to have one for every 3,000. So.
It's too expensive almost to have one for every 50,000. I think like Texas with one in 150,000 is probably closer to where it needs to be.
Now that I'm looking at this, I think it's more along the lines of percentages how they came up with these numbers. So
yeah,
based on how much the overall population was.
Do you get one senator for every county? Is that how that works?
The senatorial districts are. They're drawn outside of county lines, and that's also where the gerrymandering comes into play. Which we didn't even get into it yet, but
we have 50 different districts for senators.
Yes, and it's weird. Like Erie, for example, this is something that just happened in the last time they redrew the lines. Erie is literally split right down the middle. You have east side of Erie represented by a different U.S. senator than you do have the west side of Erie, which is very controversial. When that went through, but it's like the people don't really have any power against this. This is done. This is done by a committee member and a board and approved people, and I think this is also where you kind of get into some of the corruption here. So it's interesting. Pennsylvania has. I don't know if I'd call it a problem, but definitely unique instance compared to the rest of the nation. So. You know, interesting stuff if you ask me. So last word from any one of you two.
I still
here?
don't think
We have a
moving
minute.
out of maybe an area that's struggling similar to Jeanette into maybe a better area, even if you're looking for maybe a higher income to get to those areas. If you're in Pennsylvania, the jobs are out there. Everyone's hiring right now.
Jobs. Yeah, I think that's funny. That's what you hear. So last thoughts here, Greg. 10 seconds.
I'm still predicting a Trump win in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Trump and Toomey will successfully take the state.
Yeah.
Just on the signage.
But in Philadelphia, remember, not one person in Philadelphia voted for Romney. So
Oh, you're going to
we'll
get
see what
into
happens.
numbers.
Jeez. Oh.
We'll see what happens.
Trump could
guys.
be defeated in that end of it.
Thank you again. This is
Philadelphia is definitely going Hillary.
I don't think one person voted for
But Craig
Trump.
claims that there's a gigantic African American vote in Pittsburgh for Trump. Correct? If that's the case,
I just think the polls are off on the African American vote. I think a lot of African Americans realize that it's not just the Democratic Party that supports them. I think they're actually looking into policies and how it affects their lives. I don't think they're just.
But in that case,
as
it would still be
brain-dead
Democrats
as
that would
the
probably.
media seems to make them.
All right, I think I've let you guys ramble on. I'd like to.
I think they're a little bit
media.
more
I'd like to
intelligent.
thank
Those
everybody.
rat bastards.
I think they're smart people.
I'd like to thank everybody for listening to the Alec Italiano show. I'd like to thank my panel members, Mr. Greg Allen to my right,
You're welcome for the opportunity to hear me talk.
and Mr. Craig Ryan to my left. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. And I think that was a good show. Please comment on this show. I think we unpackaged a lot of information here, and I think it's something that the average Pennsylvanian probably has no idea is happening. And people don't think about municipality size, size of the governing body, the ideological effects of how government should be ran based off of that. Do you want to have a lot of representatives for a small amount of people? Kind of the effects, the cause and effect that has on how laws are written and how policy is debated here. So good stuff, guys. Thanks again for joining me. Don't have a preview for next show. Haven't gotten that far yet, but I think we're probably going to be sticking to along these lines and pull up a little bit more proof for you. So thanks again for listening to the Alec Italiano show, and have an excellent night, everybody.
We gotta work on the sign off.
Gotta work on that sign off.
Gotta work on the sign off. Have an excellent night.